Yeah. All right. Well, look, we will crack into it. Everybody, welcome to uh, the final, I guess, the final of season 1 of this speaker series, and we are incredibly lucky to be joined by Brian of SV Delos, somewhat of a celebrity in the sailing world. So, Brian, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
So almost a bit of context for you as well, Brian, and for everyone else. This speaker series that we've been running for 5 or 6 weeks now is hosted by the National Yacht Club's under 25 and under 30 group. And we just want to get some cool guests in, have a couple of people, tell us what they're about, different aspects of sailing. So it's been great to have some good people, and good to finish off with you and hear your stories.
Right on.
And yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, look, I mean, Brian, like, just to kind of kick things off, really, I think it would be good, just to give from your words, like, a real brief introduction to you, where you are in the world, and what you do, I guess.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll just start with like the quick version. So I was originally a engineer. An electrical engineer, and then after university, I went to university in Seattle, Washington, and I got sucked into the software world. And I did that for a number of years. And then one day I sort of realized that my bus ride to and from work was the highlight of my day. And I was just a not happy individual. I didn't look forward to days. My life was lived in like 50-minute chunks. And then I had 10 minutes to get to the next meeting. I answered hundreds of emails per day. And I just thought, if I've got to do this for the rest of my career, I'm not fulfilled. And I just needed time to reflect, time to enjoy. And that was what I got on the bus ride. It was just my time to listen to music, to stare out the window with nobody wanting anything from me. And so I said, well, you know what, to heck with the money. I was making good money. I was happy professionally and all that, but I just decided to go out and take some time off. And I saved up some money. I bought a boat, which after looking for a proper blue water boat, I found an Amel Super Maramu, a 53-foot boat, a used boat. Sold my house, sold everything else that I owned, and then took off from Seattle with the intention of sailing to New Zealand, which I thought would be about an 18-month trip, because that's how much money I had to last for 18 months. And the story continues. Got to New Zealand and met amazing people, had crazy adventures, absolutely fell in love with the lifestyle, and decided that I just couldn't stop. And so we kind of hodgepodged another budget together to continue sailing with friends. And then we started making the YouTube videos to show, our families, our mom and dad, what we were up to. And surprisingly to us, other people started watching them. And one thing led to another. And that's actually how we're able to fund the travels now, is from the YouTube videos and the crowdfunding support that we get on Patreon and income from YouTube and stuff like that. But I guess it's fair to say that we didn't start making videos. We didn't sail to start making videos. That was not the intention at all. We just wanted to continue sailing, and it seemed like at the time a unique way to do it. And just try and have fun. I think so far we're somewhere between 70 and 80,000 nautical miles on the trip.
Wow.
And so we've crossed the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean, a few years in each one. I think it's like 35 or 40 countries so far, 6 different continents. So we've been to Africa, South America, North America, Europe, Australia, Asia. So it's been a heck of a trip, and made a lot of mistakes along the way. Had a lot of fun, but we've learned, and it's cool. So.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I think we can all obviously track it through YouTube, but for you guys, it's nice to have that record, because you've done so much. You can look back on it in later years and see what you've done. And we'll kind of dive into that YouTube stuff a little bit later. But
yeah, sure.
Like a big one for you guys, something you mentioned there is when you started, it wasn't that you went out to make YouTube videos to fund a round the world trip. You went out, you just left because you wanted that freedom. you wanted to get away from that 9 to 5, you know.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Like, you know, surely that's
Oh.
it's a big jump, you know, and I think a lot of people aspire to that, but you know,
Yeah. Well, to be honest,
how did it go?
the first 6 months was really tough
Okay.
because I came, not only is taking off and sailing like that a very steep learning curve, but I came from a very kind of structured daily schedule, where, you know, my entire day from basically 8 in the morning till whenever I was done working was filled with things. And then I had the weekends off. And now I almost felt guilty for having so much time. And it really took a while for me to adjust to that
Okay.
thought of like, well, it's okay to just sit here and it's okay to read. Um, and it's still something that I struggle with from time to time because, you know, now that we are running our own business on the boat, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you work for yourself, there's always more time that you can put in because it directly benefits you. So I kind of have to remind myself that it is okay to chill, it is okay to relax, it's okay to be not productive,
Yeah.
and that's just fine. The first 3 years of the trip, you know, after I got over that, it was amazing. I mean, we just sailed, we enjoyed ourselves, we explored, we did random things, we had no schedule. I mean, there would be months at a time where I would have no connectivity, you know, outside of the people on the boat, and I really loved that. It was amazing. You know, we've somewhat regressed from that by doing the YouTube videos, unfortunately, because, you know, it is a full-time job. There's a lot of communication, and anybody that tells you that they can make YouTube videos and it doesn't impact their lifestyle, I think is maybe not telling you the whole story.
Yeah.
Because it's a serious amount of work if you want to do it properly and make a living from
Yeah.
it.
For sure. I think as well, you probably, people forget you also have a 53-foot boat to maintain, and
Yes,
that
so
is no small feat, you know.
we kind of like to joke that you know, maintaining and sailing the boat is definitely a full-time job.
Hmm.
Making the YouTube videos is another full-time job, and now we have our 18-month daughter Sierra on board, which is another full-time job. So we juggle quite a bit,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a bit much. But you know, we try and take steps back and realize why we're doing this in the first place and what's important to us, and all the
Yeah.
rest of the stuff can sort of slip away.
For sure. And I'd say over what the 11 years you've been doing it now, it's just been a constant learning curve for you guys. And it seems like you're adding a new task every couple of years, you know, and
Yeah,
like just
yeah.
to kind of keep things going. So, you know, I can't imagine like having those essentially 3 full-time jobs you have now, trying to balance them all at once, you know. But you know, so your boat, I guess, you know, you said 53 foot. Is it French design, correct?
Yep, yep. She was
Yeah.
built in La Rochelle, France, in a Mel Super Marumu. You know, the design on these boats it was designed as a blue water cruiser
Mhm.
for the who founded the company, Henri Hamel, back in the 60s. So they've been making and evolving the design for a long time, and it's only recently that the company has taken a little bit different direction on their boats. They've stopped making the catches. They're still incredibly nice boats, but I think they're more targeted towards, you know, it's a little fancy for my taste. You know, they're also 1.4 million euros or something around there. Don't exact quote me on that, but it's, you know,
Yeah.
if you were to buy a new boat like this, it's I just don't have that kind of money, and I don't know who
Yeah.
does. It's maybe a different type of person that's buying the new boats.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And then I guess, you know, you were obviously on a limited budget as such. Like when you started off the campaign, like, you know, when you bought the boat, did you have to do much work to it, or was it pretty much a plug and play when you found it?
Well, when I bought Delos, she was 8 years old. And so she was in relatively good condition. The previous owner had taken good care of her. So that was fine. And I decided for the first year of owning her, I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to drill a hole in the boat. I wasn't going to replace anything. I wasn't going to tweak anything. I was just going to learn about the boat, and how I felt that she sailed and how the systems were, and then take it from there. And so it's largely remained unchanged, you know, with exception to upgrades to the electronics, the navigation, the solar, the batteries, the stove, like that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But she, you know, she was a well-equipped boat with, you know, washing machine, water maker, a lot of redundant systems, electric winches. We even, have a dishwasher, which we don't actually use, but it's fun to say that you have one on a sailboat.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and now I've noticed that she's just turned 20 years old, and so between the 15 and the 20-year mark, I saw my expenditures on maintenance increase dramatically, because then you start seeing major systems start to wear out. Like we had to replace our generator, and that's a $20,000 project when you have to do it in South Africa, and you have to put on new sails. We had to do new standing rigging. We've had to replace the autopilot. Obviously, all the electronics were so old that when a bird flew off with our wind direction sensor, it was so expensive to get one of those old B&G units that it made sense to upgrade the entire system to something new for the future. So
for sure.
We've sort of been, instead of doing a major refit, we've sort of been doing it piecemeal as we could afford it as we go. And the only thing that has not been replaced is the original Volvo, the TMD22, which now has just over 8,000 miles, or 8,000 hours on it. But still, not leaking oil, still good compression, still starts up first time every time, running like a champ. So I think we still got a few more years left on that one.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so much on board by the sounds things. Like I know you have like dive compressors as well. You have all this kind of stuff. You're obviously from an engineering background, but I think computer engineering, correct? So like or have you had to teach yourself this over the years, or do you get help from the outside, or how do you keep up with the maintenance?
Well, both. I mean, when I was in high school before university, I worked as a diesel mechanic on trucks and stuff. So I was always fairly mechanically inclined, but I think most of the things I learned either by really screwing up and then saying like, well, I'll never do that again, or from other people in the cruiser community. Just a great example is when we were in the Bahamas, when COVID started and we were locked down, and unable to move for about 120 days it was like an uninhabited island. And we had just gotten a whole load of food in the boat, which was quite some doing to get it on the boat. And our fridge stopped working. I knew nothing about refrigeration because it had just always worked. But luckily, we had another boat next to us who was an old school cruiser, and he knew a lot about refrigeration. He had the gauges on board. He knew how to troubleshoot it. And between the spare parts, collecting hoses and gauges and refrigerant amongst the boats, and with my friend Jerry's knowledge, we were able to get it back up and running. And since then, I've been able to help out at least 2 or 3 other boats with that knowledge. So I think cruisers in general are super, super helpful, almost being helpful to a point of trying to help you out. Just good people,
Yeah, I think we had a talk last week with one of our members who did a circumnavigation. I think one thing he said was that there really is a community between the cruisers, and you will see people like on your route, and you'll see them again. And I think everyone's super willing to kind of help each other out, which is, obviously helps in situations like that, which is always good.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like, obviously, you guys are also very, kind of eco-conscious as well. Like it's pretty evident from your videos. You definitely try to live off the land as much as you can. You're always fishing, catching your own meals, all that kind of stuff. Like your boat, obviously solar panels, things like that. What kind of efforts are you guys making in terms of like your eco mission, and because obviously you're trying to portray that to your audience as well. So it's an important relationship between the two.
Yeah, well, we've made a number of changes to Delos. We've added a lot of wind power, and we've added quite a bit of solar power. We have almost 1,500 watts of solar on board, and that with the lithium batteries has really been a game changer for us, because they just they're about 99% efficient, whereas we were seeing about a 60% charging efficiency on the lead batteries. And so right away, when we switched to the lithium batteries, it was almost like a 30 or 40% increase in charging efficiency without even adding any more panels. So, the power is just going into the batteries instead of creating heat and bubbles in the acid. The other thing we're able to do is we got rid of propane. so it was kind of funny because we got a lot of comments on how dangerous, lithium batteries were, because people's, cell phones are, burning up, and all these things are happening. Cars are burning, and it's a completely different battery chemistry that you would put in a boat. It's a little bit less energy dense, which means it's more forgiving. But after we switched from the from propane to electric cooking, induction stove, and an electric convection oven, even after making that change, we still saw our generator running time be reduced by 30%.
Wow.
And we also don't have to search out propane, which is an adventure. I don't know
Yeah.
how many times I've had to go into random port trying to find a giant propane bottle to turn upside down and decant into our small tanks. A lot, but I can find other adventures with my time now, so that's not a problem.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I was listening to a podcast you did recently, and you were saying that it's about, obviously for you guys, you have to do what you can for your kind of your impact on the environment, but you've seen quite a lot of, I guess, on your travels, kind of negative impacts on the environment, like, sea, like in terms of like sea trash, and like some, I think you were talking about like explosive fishing and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
is there a big difference you see, in terms of people's perception to the environment in some of the countries and waters you've been in versus, I guess, like, in Florida where you are now?
I think it's a slight difference. I mean, people are starting to become more aware, and I think it's a generational thing. So, like you said, when we were in Indonesia, we witnessed a guy that was fishing with dynamite. And so, he would literally sit in his canoe, he would throw a stick of dynamite over, he would blow up a large section of the reef, which would kill all the fish. And then he would swim down and gather them up, and then that's what he would eat. But when we talk to some of the kids in the village, they kind of put it in a real simple term. They're like, well, when that guy comes by, he scares away all the fish. The fish never come back after he's here. And so they started to realize that, this was not a sustainable method of fishing. So, these are, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, but, they're already fishing, and they're going to be the ones putting the food on their family's plate in the years to come after the dynamite bomber guy is gone. And so you hope that they learn a little bit about that. Also in the Philippines, we went to a village where the fishermen used to feed the whale sharks rocks, because the whale sharks were competing for the fishermen's bait fish. And then they realized that people were actually traveling to their island, and they could make more money off of taking people out to see the whale sharks rather than fishing. And so they've kind of changed their economy from a fishing economy to a tourism-based economy. And then they stopped feeding the whale sharks rocks, which is a good thing. So small changes. Plastic is another terrible one, especially in Southeast Asia. Sometimes we go to shore and we'd literally have to wade through an inch thick layer of plastic. And you still see that, although, more in the Western hemisphere here, it's a little bit less prevalent, although you still see a lot of trash that gets blown downwind from Haiti, Dominican Republic. If you go near the Windward Islands and Bahamas, it's just covered with plastic from these countries. It's a real shame.
Yeah. And I guess, also kind of you dug into, some of the locations you've been there. So I guess that's a good segue into, that kind of the route you've taken around the world, So obviously you said you've done 70, 80,000 miles at this stage. I think most people, when they do a cruise, they'll do like the Med, and they'll go across the Atlantic, they'll do the Caribbean, then they'll go through the Panama Canal. But you guys have spent quite a lot of time in slightly less chartered territories like the Philippines and Indonesia and stuff like that. What kind of how did you decide where you're going to go? What do you base your routing on?
We just wanted to sail downwind. So if you keep on keeping the wind behind you, that's kind of what happens, right? You just sort of go west. I never intended to do a circumnavigation. We just wanted to go visit cool places, and it turns out at some point it's easier just to keep on going around than to try and turn back and sail back around. And so yeah, if you have time, then you know, that's the best thing you can do. And you know, we've always liked, you know, people always ask us, why don't you go to the Med? Why don't you sail to Europe? And my answer, I don't know if this is right or not. It's just how I feel. It's always that, well, you know, I've traveled the Med before. You know, I bought a rail pass. I flew there, and I traveled around. I went to Italy. I went all over the place, and it was fantastic, and I loved it. But it's a much different experience to be able to take your boat somewhere where you can't do that. You know, where the only way to get there is by boat, and you know, you can get there and you can stay a very, very long time, get to know the people. And so, you know, we've always tended just to kind of migrate to these less populated areas where it's you just have a different view and reality of
Yeah.
the people you meet. And I've heard the opposite from other people too, that they don't enjoy that. They would much rather see the more progressed cultural side of things, visit museums and enjoy the fine dining and the food and staying in marinas. And you know, I
Yeah.
guess it's just a matter of personal preference, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I like,
Yeah.
you know, you can, again, you can see it in a lot of your videos. You know, you really do get the chance to integrate with the locals in some of the places you've been. You know, and they seem to really kind of, you know, welcome you in. You know, is there anywhere in particular around the world where, you know, you've kind of come ashore and you've been like, wow, this is like culturally like insane, or like, you know, really different. You know?
Yeah, probably. I can think of like three right off the top of my head. And the first one would be, you know, I think when you're traveling to places like New Zealand and Australia, it's pretty cool, but then again, it's also a Western society. So everybody is speaking English, things are very developed. But when you start getting into these strange places, like, you know, we went to this place in Indonesia where, you know, nobody spoke English. Alcohol was illegal. Like the only thing they bartered with was like cigarettes and this underground like Chinese alcohol drink that they had. And you know, the Philippines, where people are making, you know, their wage is $1 a day, right? And they're the most caring, giving, smiling people. They make, you know, $30 a month, or you know, close to 30 euros a month, something like that. But they don't care. You know, they all pitch together. They buy a bottle of rum for a liter, which is also $1, and then they just sit around and they share it and they stare out at the ocean, and you know, that's their life. And you know, Madagascar is also another crazy place where, you know, everybody speaks the local language of Malgache or French, so we were quite out of our element there. But just yeah, it's just a whole, it really kind of shakes you at your foundation when you try and do something or buy something, and the first thing that happens is you have to learn how to communicate with people all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it must, like, and also it's not like you learn to do it, like, you know, as you said, everyone's different, so it's a constant kind of learning experience and trying to figure it out as you go, you know.
Yeah, it can be quite exhausting sometimes though, which is, you know, you're like, well, I just want to go to the store and buy food.
Yeah,
This doesn't need to be a 8 hour, you know, thing out of my day, but you know, sometimes it is, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
um and then, you know, another thing for you guys, you know, I know there's the three of you, you know, and a 53-foot boat, you know, and a 53-foot boat isn't an easy one to sail, just, you know, one, two people up. So you obviously bring crew on from all over the place. You've had a huge amount of crew over the years, and I know, like, you know, a
Yeah.
couple of them have been, obviously, you know, your brother has been a core part of the crew. You know, kind of talk us through that, and your kind of how you found these people, you know, throughout the years, and who you've had on
Yeah.
boards and how that worked.
Well, it kind of started when we ran out of money in New Zealand, and you know, we wanted to continue and sail on to Australia. And so we just met some random people in Auckland, and we said, hey, you know, the backpackers, basically, we were hanging out with some people and said, hey, do you guys want to sail to Fiji? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, so what are you guys spending in the backpackers? And they were spending like, you know, 20 euros a night. And I said, well, you know, our cost per person on the boat, including 3 meals, is like 15 euros, including fuel and everything. And so if you can afford 125 euros a week, you can come sailing to Fiji with us. And they were like, yeah, great. And everybody was happy because, you know, we had, you know, 2 or 3 extra people to help cover the expenses of the boats, which prolonged our cruising. We also had help for watches and stuff. So that's how it kind of started. And we were just taking, you know, people that we randomly met and that seemed cool, seemed like we'd get along with. It was, you know, low stress, and, you know, they could do the watches and help cook and stuff like that. After we started making videos, then, you know, we started taking on people that contacted us, never took money from people. We would just ask people to cover their own expenses. You know, just cover your flights. We'll take care of the rest if you crew on the boat. We started doing some crew competitions where we'd ask people to, like, you know, enter a competition with a video, and if we liked the video that you made, then, you know, you'd win a come sailing for us for, like, we usually did a month minimum, because some of the places that we're in, you know, you can't just come out for a few days or a week. It's usually about a month by the time you fly in, and we meet you at a port when we sail to the next port. And now it's evolved once again, because you know, we're after having like 55 different people sail with us, you know, now it's just we had our baby, and so we decided that we wanted to, you know, see what sailing with a family was like, which basically means that when we're at sea, I'm a single-handed sailor and Karen is a single mom, taking care of the baby. So I do longer watches now, and you know, we were going to have some other people come out and join us, but then COVID happened, and then it was logistically impossible to get people to the boat, and still is incredibly difficult to do in a safe way. And so we're just sailing differently. You know, now we do less 10-day sails and more, you know, 2 and 3 day sails. It's also a sort of reflection of the part of the world we're in. When you're in the Caribbean, the islands aren't that far apart. You know, when you're in the Indian Ocean, you have like 2 islands over 6,000 miles to get from, you know, India or Thailand to South Africa. So, you know, you're doing these long, you know, 1,500 mile or 2,000 mile stretches, which is also nice. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to figure it out as we go, though.
Yeah, it must be difficult as well. Like, you know, you have the guts of 700,000 people following you on YouTube now, you know, so you probably want to have everybody wants to come out for a month, you know, even like, you know, your patrons and stuff. It's just when you get to that number of people and followers, you know, you have to really change up the way you do it, I guess.
Yeah, it has become a little bit more challenging, I guess. It's both a blessing and a curse at the same time. Because, you know, how do you choose people without having somebody feel alienated or that they deserve more than somebody else? And you know, we did this thing. It was when after Karen and I left Delos and Brady was going to sail her over to the Azores and then to Portugal. We wanted to run a sailing scholarship in which we would find somebody who was very young, like under the age of 18. And we thought this would be a great idea because we could give somebody an opportunity to see what it's like to cross an ocean and pay for their expenses and all that, that they might not otherwise have. And we actually caught a lot of flack from that from people because they thought it was age discrimination. And I said, well, it's a sailing scholarship. It's supposed to be for people who would not normally be able to do this. And I found that a little bit disheartening, but it is what it is. And we did it anyway. And you know, I think it was worth it. So
for
we'll
sure.
probably continue to do things in the future. If you know, flights ever start going back and forth again in a big way, and we feel safe about having people on board.
I mean, like you know, you're talking about getting a little bit of flack for that, you know, trying to get somebody younger on board. You know, over time, you know, as you've gained a following, how have you managed to manage, you know, being in the public eye like that? Has it been a tough one to kind of handle or get used to being, you know, having everybody kind of looking in at your life? Or
that's another reason why we tend to go to these more desolate places where we're not known, because, you know, we don't really relish or thrive on that sort of notoriety, and in some respects it sort of makes us a little bit uncomfortable. It's what we do for a living, and we post our lives on YouTube and social media, so of course that's what's going to happen. It must be a tough one. It's a blessing because we get to meet so many incredible people, and they tell us how, you know, they've been maybe hopefully inspired to sail, or maybe if they don't sail, just to take some time out of their lives to do something that they enjoy. which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be a bit much, you know, like if we head into a populated area where sailing is very popular, and then we, you know, people are coming up and you know, knocking on the boat every, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, and everybody's super nice and they want to say hello, but at the same time it's almost like you're an animal in the zoo, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, it's
I can
we try
imagine.
and deal with it the best we can, and sometimes we just disappear for a few weeks and we go dark and we go someplace in the middle of nowhere, and we recharge for a bit, and
Yeah.
that's how we deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be a tough one to manage, but I think you know, by the sounds of it, you're used to it at this stage, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know, like how long exactly, or like you know, I went back obviously in the videos, but how long have you been doing, you know, uploading YouTube videos for now?
Let's see. I think we started in 2013.
Okay,
So
so
what's it been? Almost 8 years, something
yeah,
like that.
and
Yeah.
you're up to about, what is it, 300 like proper videos. You know, you got another
Yeah.
100 or so smaller videos. You know, that's a lot of time. But you know, like, how did you start? You know, how does one start vlogging or start documenting, you know,
Well, I
a
mean,
trip like this?
at that time, there was really not many people doing it.
Hmm.
Uh, I can think of maybe like one or two other people on boats that were kind of making some videos of some sort, but I think we were maybe among the first or the first to actually say we're going to do a series about actually sailing around the world.
Hmm.
And basically, we were writing a blog at the time. We were writing, you know, our words and pictures and posting them, and there was, you know, our parents and maybe you know, a few dozen people reading that, friends and stuff. And then we met another sailor who said, hey, you know, it would actually be very cool if instead of doing the blog, you guys made videos about it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if we could do that. And so I spent like $200 on the cheapest little camcorder I could, and we went and we Googled, like, you know, how do you make a video? How do you edit a video? How do you put in music? And we just started cracking away at it. You know, the first ones were very rough. They were like, you know, almost like a slideshow with music behind it, something like that, that, you know, you would kind of torture your family after you get back from a holiday watching. And, you know, we kind of evolved it from there. And now I'm really proud of the quality that we're able to do, and the editing and the shots we can get with the equipment we have on board. We probably spend, I'd say, for every minute of video, finished video, there's probably about 3 hours of work behind that.
Wow.
Probably 2.5 hours of editing, and maybe, you know, 30 minutes of filming. So it's, you know, if it's a 20-minute video, it's easily you know, 50 to 60 hours of work
Yeah.
behind that. And when you're trying to do one of those every week to keep, you know, the audience engaged and the YouTube algorithm happy, then you can easily overwork yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I think people like underestimate how much work goes into it, you know.
Yeah.
Have you ever, because I think, yeah, I think it's the crew of La Vagabond. I think they almost, I think they like outsource their video editing and stuff, you know, because I think it just all became a bit much. But you
Yeah.
know, you guys still do it all yourself, which is impressive in itself, you know. Between,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean,
as I said, yeah,
it feels, although it is a lot of work, it feels a little bit more genuine for us
for
to
sure.
be that involved in it and to tell the stories that we want to tell,
Yeah,
you know, as opposed. So I think
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with either way. It's just kind of what we
yeah.
prefer. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely comes across, you know. And then that's what then leads people obviously into the Patreon side as well, you know. And I think
Yeah.
like I think that there isn't enough awareness about Patreon and what it does, you know, for people like you and other creators, musicians, photographers, everything, you know. So, you know, for you guys, you know, just kind of give us an explanation of, you know, what Patreon is to you and how you guys utilize it, because I think that's a super interesting part of your kind of, I guess, business model and your life, you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing to say is, without the support that we get on Patreon, we would have stopped doing this like a long time ago. It just wouldn't have been feasible for us. On average, every supporter that we have on Patreon is worth approximately 3,000 normal YouTube viewers. So it's a pretty crazy ratio if you think about it, because YouTube pays on this thing for ads called cost per mil, right? So they have a certain dollar amount for every 1,000 people that watch an ad. This is the money you get, and it's literally fractions of a cent per view. So in order to make anything meaningful, you literally have to have hundreds of thousands and probably millions of views to make it worthwhile. And so for a lot of the smaller channels, and in the YouTube world, we're still a relatively small channel. I mean, we don't even have 1 million subscribers. And so, the people that directly support the videos for us via Patreon is actually what makes it happen. And if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like, what's the name of the Kickstarter, right? So on Kickstarter, you can donate money to a particular project that you want to happen. You think it's a cool idea, it's something of value. If you help donate money to make it happen, then you get one of the first whatever it is that they're making. Patreon is sort of the same concept, except instead of having one deliverable, it's like an ongoing deliverable. Like, maybe somebody's doing cartoons, or they're doing artwork, or they're doing music, or they're making sailing YouTube videos like we do. People who value it tend to give us a few dollars. It doesn't have to be a lot. Every dollar counts, and that's what we use to buy cameras and to buy drones. And we have quite a few expenses due strictly to the production of the videos, like internet, and of course the time that we put into them, and all the gear we have to buy and keep up, and all that stuff. So that's where it all goes. And did that answer the question? I think I kind of went off on a tangent there, maybe.
No, that was perfect, because I think it's important for everybody to have a context of how you're doing what you're doing as well, because
there's benefits for the patrons. We when you get it's just physically impossible, given the amount of hours in the day, to be able to communicate with the people who watch the videos on YouTube. I mean, there's just too many comments, and so we're not. We used to be able to, but now that it's grown to a certain level, we just can't answer everybody's emails and everybody's comments and everybody's questions. And so, one of the things we pledge is that if you're on Patreon, that every comment or every question you send us, we will answer. That's a benefit of supporting us, is you're able to chat one-on-one with us directly, whether it be email or messages or something like that, and we'll answer your questions. We'll give you advice if we know something. They get discounts on gear, free gear. They get invited. Like, that's typically the pool we draw through when we need crew. We always go to our patrons first. It's sort of like a more intimate kind of relationship that we have with our supporters. And it's nice for you to have that conversation, with those people, and that connection, and have that kind of almost that bit of give back, and almost that just have the openness for your audience, because I think it definitely is really great. And it's oftentimes now when we go to a place, and in pre-COVID times, and we could actually have meetups, then we would do meetups with our patrons. We'd say, hey guys, let's meet at this bar. We're gonna have a beer and talk about sailing. If we would do that to the general larger public audience, it just wouldn't be possible. Too much, too many people. So it's cool to have that close connection with a smaller group.
And then I guess the last one, and one thing that I love on your website is you have the offer to buy you a beer. That's a nice little token. So I guess the most important question is, if someone bought you a beer, after all the countries you've been to, which beer would you buy?
Oh man. Well, it changes from day to day. As of lately, I've become quite enamored with IPAs, because there's some incredible craft beers up in New England, in the US where we were. I'm quite fond of a good IPA.
Yes.
I remember in the Philippines, there was this beer called Three Horses beer. No, that was in Madagascar. In Philippines, it was SMG, like San Miguel Brewery. Just, I love local beers. And so,
Mhm.
Wherever we are at the time, if somebody sends us a little bit of bias of beer money, then we'll treat ourselves to either a dinner or a beer or just something fun, and we'll take a little picture of ourselves, kind of enjoying it as a thank you, and send
Yeah.
it off to them.
Yeah, I'm really happy you didn't say a can of Guinness just to keep us happy, because Guinness out of a can is not
Well,
nice. So
well,
you
we haven't sailed to Ireland yet, so
yeah,
uh,
you did good there. So somebody said their best IPA ever is Kinnegar from Donegal. So maybe we'll have to get a couple of them over to you, and you'll have to try them versus the American ones.
I would love that. I would love that.
So look, I have one more question, but just once I've asked this one, I'll open up to the floor. So if anybody has any questions, just put them in the chat, and then we'll go through them in a little bit. But the last one for me, and then I'll hand it over, is someone like me, or a lot of the other people on the call, we kind of aspire to live this life that you're living and go off. And I asked you already, how you made that jump, but if you had a bit of advice, for somebody like myself or someone younger or even whatever age, to go and do what you're doing, what would it be?
Wow. Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is this is an amazing, incredible lifestyle, but it's also a lot of sacrifice. So when you think about leaving, you're talking about the financial aspect, but also the kind of societal and emotional aspect of leaving all of your friends, all of your family, and a solid home base for months, if not years at a time. And so that can be quite trying. It can be very difficult, but I think that the best things in life, they don't come without some level of sacrifice. And if somebody says to you that there's no catches involved, then they're probably trying to make money off of you in some way or another, by selling you something. I've also found that when I've made a decision in my life that kind of like when you have the easy, comfortable decision on one side, and you have the decision on the other one that puts that kind of like fist or knot in your stomach that makes you feel a little bit nervous and queasy. Those are always when I've had the most amazing kind of personal growth experiences in my life, is by taking that other path.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would
Nice.
recommend, is definitely at least doing something. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be sailing around the world. I mean, it can also be, I tell people, like, I used to work through my lunch break and answer emails just to get on, and now I think back about how much time I spent doing that, and how much healthier I would have been mentally as a person if instead I would have just sat outside and stared at the ocean or the park while I ate my sandwich. And it only takes 30 minutes a day, but it's a small start.
Yeah, that's definitely wise words for a lot of people on this call. People be taking notes now.
It's all about the small things and getting some time to yourself, I think. But I do
Exactly.
highly recommend this lifestyle, at
Yeah.
least for some of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, look, from the sounds things, it's incredible. So I think definitely, we can see why you would recommend it. Okay, so we have a couple of questions come in here. So one from Mary Gorman, and it is, how do you find raising an 18-month-old on a boat?
Well, it's incredibly challenging. It was a lot easier before Sierra could walk, because then we would just put her down and she would sort of stay in one place. It's changed the way that we have had to do a lot of things. I've never really, this is our first child, and so I don't have any experience with children in a house or a normal setting. I've talked to other people, and they say that it's still, it's not like living in a house makes it that much easier. It's still a lot of time and a lot of effort. And then I guess the one really good aspect of it is, because of the lifestyle, we're able to spend 100% of our time together. And so, we can literally take Sierra, and she doesn't have to worry about going to daycare or, a babysitter or anything like that. We can work our schedule around her nap times and all that, and then just spend time as a family and go swimming and go hang out at the beach. And in fact, after this call, we're going to take the dinghy, we're going to jump in the dinghy, and we're going to go to the park. There's like a park that we can get to on the water, so that's how we're going to spend the rest of our afternoon.
Nice.
So it's there's all the safety aspects of sailing in rough weather with children, a little baby, that when we're at sea, I think Karen has the tougher job. I just make sure that we're safe and that we sail the boat. But Sierra wants to explore, and when the boat's getting tossed around, she has to be watched very closely, because she gets bored. She just wants to play and walk around, and she can easily get knocked down or thrown across the cabin. And we still don't have it figured out. I've heard some people put their babies in like little bicycle seats out in the cockpit, and that works for some people. We tried that, and she just screamed. Like she doesn't like to be, she doesn't even like car rides. She'll just scream for every time we put her in a car seat. So I guess every child is different. Yeah.
You'll have to get her all trained up now, so in 2 or 3 years you can put her on the helm and you can go off watch and have
I'll look forward to
nap.
that. I'll just be happy when she's potty trained, so I don't have to like change a poopy diaper, when we're in the middle of the ocean.
In 30 knots,
have all the hatches closed and there's no fresh air down there. It's imagine that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple more here. So one from Noel Butler here is, if you could only go to one of the places you've been, or take one of the trips you've taken for a month, where or what would it be? So I think that's like if you were to go back and do one of them again.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, we're going back. We want to go back to the South Pacific, and specifically, I would love to revisit New Zealand and the Philippines. I mean, New Zealand is incredible, but from a sailing perspective, I'd probably have to go with the Philippines. Like there's like 7,107 islands there to explore. It's incredibly cheap to travel there. The people are super friendly, and it's very different. And it's actually the second largest English speaking country in the world. So it's second only to the US, but the government and legal language is English. And so you can communicate easily, which is always nice. And it's a lot of fun there.
Nice, cool. So one from Gonyo Carol here. So I feel like this is from again, kind of what I was talking about, is that bit of advice. But other than YouTube, now that connectivity can be so much better, do you ever think about going back to the real world and working on the boat? So back to an engineering or a job like that, because I see there's other sailing YouTubers mentioning the increased number of fully remote working cruises in the Bahamas this year, particularly during COVID.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be useful at anything anymore. Like, I've been out of industry for a decade now, and maybe I could find something, but I don't think I could go back to a desk job. I'll put it that way. Like if I were to go back to another job, it would have to be something like outside in the outdoors, or I'm out in nature. If I could find something like that, then I would consider it. I could never go back to being a software developer, like working for a Microsoft or anything like that. I think I'm ruined for that.
You've gone too far away to this life now. No going back.
I think I've come to the realization that I'm happy to trade the amount of money that I could make in a corporate job like that for a lifestyle. And I'm happier making less money and having more of my own time to do what I want, is the realization I came to.
Cool. So then Heather Wright has asked, where do you consider home, and do you think there's a need to have a home base on land?
Well, I mean, I consider home to be Delos. I mean, it's the only permanent home I have. I have no other possessions outside of the boat. That's it. I do think that at some point we would love to spend more time in Sweden. I would love for Sierra to experience the Swedish culture. We're teaching her to be bilingual, so Karen is speaking to her in Swedish, and then we also speak in English. So I could easily see us getting a little place in Sweden close to Karen's family, and then maybe spending the summers there, and then the winters sailing somewhere tropical, more of like a seasonal sort of thing, instead of spending years at a time on the boat. That could be appealing in the years to come, especially when she starts getting into school age, and it would be nice for her to socialize with other children her age and things like that. Although there are a lot of cruising kids out, it's just things we're thinking about. So we'll know when we get there.
And how would you cope with that? Because you're used to these warm sunny climates. It'll be pretty different now going up to Sweden.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe I guess there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only bad clothes, right?
There we go. That's forever an optimist. That's the way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I've spent a few winters in Sweden. We over the years we usually try and take 3 to 6 months off from every year or two. And when we do that, we usually split it. We'll come to the US and we'll spend some time with my family here in Florida. And then the next time we take a break, we'll go to Sweden, and then we'll spend time with Karen's family. And I enjoy both. I really do. I like chopping wood and building fires and hiking around in the snow. And I do like that. I don't know. I mean, sailing in cold weather is incredibly tough. Especially with a boat with a non-insulated boat like we have. We have an incredible heating system on board, and it did very well, but then we got a lot of condensation inside. And I think also having Sierra at this young age, where she wants to go out and explore and doesn't understand that hey, it's 4 degrees outside and it's blowing 40 knots, and we can't go outside today. We're kind of stuck on the boat. It's hard for her to understand.
To understand that,
kind of goes nuts, right?
Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a more technical one here that I also don't quite understand, but Bernard has asked, how did the sonic anti-fouling work? Is it costly for a cruiser?
Okay, so the ultrasonic anti-fouling works great for hard growth. So it does good for certain types of barnacles. It'll keep the hard growth off the boat, mollusks. It'll keep your prop free from barnacles. What it will not prevent is soft growth. So, like the slime that builds up that eventually turns into like algae and then turns into the stringy grass that you need to clean off. You still need to do that and keep up on it. So I think on its own, you still have to clean your boat, although it makes the job easier, and you can perhaps go a little bit longer between cleaning. I think the ideal solution would be some sort of a biocide mixed in conjunction with the sonic anti-fouling system to really knock it out. And that's, right now we're trying a new bottom paint that's also a copper-free paint. Unfortunately, it's not for sale on the market right now because it's still going through environmental approvals, but it's based on Econea. It's spelled Econea, and zinc oxide. So some of the same ingredients that you use in sunscreen. And it's doing a fantastic job of preventing the soft growth. And so, those two together, I think are quite cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet by any means, but does it work? Yes, absolutely. But if you think you're going to put it on and never have to dive your boat again, then you might be a little surprised.
Yeah, I don't think that's it. That's realistic. I don't think any paint could do that now. Was that like an environmental choice to go with this versus a copper-based one? Obviously, because it's not great for the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, we started looking at some of the effects that the buildup of copper can have, and especially in areas with restricted currents and water flow, like which are naturally places where you want to anchor and where marinas are for obvious protection from the wind and the weather, and what it can do to the environment. And so we started looking at, does anything work? We'll just keep on trying things until we find something that's good. I mean, copper works for sure. It works, but I mean, that's why people have been using it for hundreds of years. But I do, there's a couple of states in the US that have banned the use of copper. I think also in the Netherlands. I think there's a few other countries in Europe that have banned it. And so I think it's only a matter of time before it sort of happens in the years to come. Yeah.
Nice. Good stuff. Cool. So we have time for one more question. So this one's from Sam Duncan again, and he says, since COVID, have you found entering and leaving countries more or less difficult?
Oh, absolutely more difficult.
Yeah.
You know, just this past season, we wanted to sail up to Nova Scotia and explore Canada. You know, we kept on sailing, hoping that the borders would open, and every month we got the report that, you know, the border closure has been extended for another month. You know, no exceptions, and so we got within, I think, about 10 miles of the Canadian border, and then had to turn around.
Wow.
You know, and head back south. There are a few places in the Caribbean that's open, but, you know, you need to have a test before you go, a test when you get there, and there's extra fees, and it's a little bit more rigid now, so it's made it more difficult all around. And yeah, we're just sort of on the slow, we're sort of slowed down our whole plans. Our next, Mexico is still open, so we're gonna be sailing to Mexico next, because Karen's visa is expiring. You know, she's still on a 6-month visa here in the US, so we need to be out of here pretty soon. So we'll sail to Mexico, and we're hoping that we got heard a rumor that Belize is going to open up in the coming weeks. So we're going to sail down to Belize and then Guatemala. And there's still a lot of places that are closed, but we're just, you know, we've got nowhere to go and some time to spend in some places. So we're just taking it as it comes.
It'll be a lot of short-term planning and just waiting and see the week before almost, I guess. But
yeah, exactly. It's actually pretty tough. And one thing we've noticed is that all the marinas here in southern Florida are full, because all the people that were going to travel and go to the Caribbean, they haven't, and so everybody's just sort of sitting here, waiting for something, probably next season.
Well, look, Brian, I cannot
you
tell
guys still there?
Yeah.
Did we lose? I don't know if you can still hear me. Uh-oh. Oh, are you guys back?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I think I lost you. I think my internet is starting to lose connection here.
It's perfectly on time, because I was just about to say thank you so much for giving us your time. You know, that's been, you know, hearing your stories and everything you've done, and, you know, everything has been incredible, and you've had me captured anyway. So thank you very much. And I would definitely recommend everybody on the call to go and check out the YouTube channel and the Patreon, and definitely at least to buy you a beer to say thank you for joining us tonight, because we definitely
appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. So look, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing these videos now throughout the next couple of years, and keep them coming.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for watching, and thanks for setting this up. It's nice to talk to people and hopefully just tell a little bit about a lifestyle that, you know, we love very much. Not without its difficulties, of course, but it is very special. I'm happy to share it.
For sure. Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Great. Thanks very much, Brian.
Everybody take care and enjoy your evening.